Ladies and gentlemen, the return of Read SPN Sports Podcast. My little brother's looking at me through the door right now, making fun of me. Thanks, Ryan. Yep. All right. Take care and go enjoy sushi while I sit here and work. Anyways, so where was I? I've been taking a break off the podcast for a little bit, looking for full-time employment. I just got a job. I'm looking for somewhere media, so keeping my fingers crossed. But anyways, I really been taking a break because I've been doing a lot of jiu-jitsu. I've really just been focusing on myself, and it's been great. Jiu-jitsu has been a lifesaver for me. I mean, I can't even tell you how happy I am just to be able to step in a gym and step on the mats again. It was something that was out of my life for such a long time. I wrestled varsity for 5 years, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And injuries kind of really derailed my wrestling career. Tons of injuries. And mind you, my body's not 100% now, but all the surgeries I've had in the past on these injuries, they seem to have repaired really well. It doesn't help me from having a bum left shoulder and whatnot. But it is what it is. I'm just happy I get to do what I love. Shout out Henzo Gracie Rockland. Shout out all my instructors, Professor Omar, Professor Trevor, Professor Alberto, the whole nine, man. All my teammates, it's really been an unbelievable experience for me so far. We just had a kid. His name is Amari. And this kid is absolutely special. This kid is great. He just went over to the Pan Ams, which is really a national tournament. He wound up placing third in the tournament, and he lost 0-0 on advantages. Now, this is me being fresh and new to jiu-jitsu. I don't understand advantages. I think it's ridiculous. I think that if it's a 0-0 match, there needs to be an overtime period. I don't care how quick you want to move this tournament along. This kid's flying out from New York to California, and you're going to have him lose on advantage points. So I think that's ridiculous. IBJJF. Definitely got to figure something out with that. It's not about rushing a tournament. In wrestling, guess what, guys? There's no belts, which I think is... It could be a good and a bad thing, but I also think that you are going against your age group within 2 years, like especially when you're starting off like young, when you're wrestling when you're a kid. You're wrestling a year above you or a year below you, depending on your age group. And guess what? There's always going to be an overtime period no matter what. You're never going to have a match that's 0-0. There needs to be a winner, and that's in any sport. And there needed to be a winner with Dominic Reyes and John Jones this past weekend. Now, I'm going to get into this. This is the reason why I did this podcast. I was speaking to my friend Jonathan Bernard early this morning. He's an inspector. He's certified in Muay Thai judging, certified in judging overall for MMA. And he's a knowledgeable kid. He knows what he's talking about. I was talking to him these last couple of days, and he thinks Reyes won the fight. And I can't say Dominic Reyes won that fight. Now, let me just go over a couple of my frustrations with the whole judging system. Right now, guess what, guys? In this MMA community that I am in and that we are all in, the ones that are listening to this and the ones that aren't listening to this but enjoy MMA, we need to figure out a proper judging system, okay? Because here's the deal. Number one, those judges on Saturday were atrocious. Do I think they got the decision right with John Jones, Dominic Reyes? I think John won the fight based off a couple of factors. And the biggest problem with the judging is that it doesn't evolve. It's been stagnant for years and years and years now. Over a decade, there hasn't really been much improvement to it, guys. And I think that what we need to do is stop judging fights round by round and judge it as a whole, which is the way to do it, guys. You've got to judge a fight as a whole, not by round basis. Okay, now here's the thing. This is what I think we should do. I think we should have points in place for every single little action that goes into a fight, whether it's a jab landed, whether it's a right cross landed, whether it's a takedown landed. I don't care if you're controlling them for long. A takedown counts for something. If you're able to take someone down and your hands are around their hips and their hips hit the mat, that is 2 points in an amateur wrestling setting. Okay, and I think what we need to do is take little rules over from each combat sport and apply them into MMA judging and how to score properly for MMA. So one of my biggest frustrations with this whole fight was that people were saying that John Jones's takedowns were not legitimate. They're not legitimate. Guys. If you're not familiar with amateur wrestling, I don't think you should be able to speak on this matter. Do you know how hard it is to take someone down, especially professionally, in the UFC or in any major MMA organization? All these guys have good takedown defense. They could all wrestle. They could all do these things. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the UFC or any one of these major organizations. John Jones took him down 3-4 times. He may not have controlled him, but he did take him down, and that should just not be disregarded. And that drives me nuts. People are like, oh, but Dominic got up right away. Sure, John exerted a lot of energy, But I think Dom exerted more energy trying to get back up than John did taking him down. Because guess what happened in the next round? In that 5th round, John took it to him. And I think another point I'm going to bring up is why I think championship rounds should be accounted for more so than the other 3. Because a 5-round fight is totally different than a 3-round fight, okay? And here's the truth, and this is the truth about it. In a 5-round fight, you need to be able to figure out how you're going to conserve your energy properly enough to finish strong in those 4th and 5th rounds. Dominic Reyes exerted most of his energy in the first 3 rounds, okay? John Jones in the 4th and the 5th, he won those rounds. 4th and 5th, there is no doubt in my mind that John Jones won those rounds based off effective striking and effective grappling, okay? So, John was able to take him down. Sure, he didn't control him, but those are 2 points. I'm counting it for that. And I think that when in a 5-round fight, you need to be able to conserve your energy the right way. Dominic Reyes did not conserve his energy the right way. Sure, he was throwing in the beginning of the 5th round, but his energy was depleted, and John's was not. John's game plan could have been, I'm not going to coast these first 2 rounds, but I'm going to sit there and I'm going to start figuring out his timing, and then I'm going to be able to apply the right pace to be able to get to you in those later rounds, which is what I believe John Jones did. So, that's one point. I think championship rounds should definitely be counted for more. They're definitely significantly harder than the first 3. Just in terms of cardiovascularly, damage you accumulate over the first 2 rounds. It's just, I can go on and on about it, but it's definitely harder. And my other point, I was talking about my friend Jonathan Bernard today. We were talking about how there should be open judging. So, for example, open judging meaning that the fighters, coaches, whoever should be able to see how the rounds are judged, okay? So, in that case, let's say I'm fighting, right? First round's over. I'm uncertain about how that round went, with the open judging, you're able to see how you're doing as a fighter. So if you lose that first round, then you know to pick it up for the second round. Now, let's say you're winning the first 2 rounds and you're coasting, right? You're coasting in the 3rd round. I think the ref give you 1 warning. You get 1 warning. Here's the warning. You're stalling. You're not engaging in any action. You're not pushing the pace at all. You do it again, I'm taking a point away. That's the way to do it, I believe. Because now, if that point gets taken away, guess what? If your opponent wins that 3rd round and you wind up losing a point off the first 2 rounds that you won, it's a draw. No one wants a draw, guys. No one wants a draw. So there's just so many little factors that go into fighting, and I just don't think that our 10-point system is really picking up. I think what should happen is this. A takedown, in general, we should rule that, let's say, hypothetically, 5 points for a takedown, a half a point for a jab, full point for a significant strike, which is a right cross, left cross, etc., etc. Maybe 2 points depending on how significant it is. 2 points for a significant kick. 1 point for a low. Maybe 1 point for a short kick, like a short leg kick or something like that. There needs to be a system in place where we can put points to actions. Points to actions meaning a jab, cross. Any sort of boxing, there needs to be a point on it. You sweep someone, there should be points on that. You take someone down, there should be points for that. You hold them for more than 30 seconds, there should be added points to that on top of the points you're getting for the takedown. I think that the system is flawed. We don't have adequate judges, and Big John McCarthy was talking with fucking Josh Thompson today, and he was saying that the UFC should be flying out these judges who we know are credible judges. We know these are people that have been doing it for a long time. We should be flying them out to every fight. We should have a panel of 20 to 30 judges all throughout the country, all throughout the world that we can commission. We could say, we need you judging tonight. Joe Rogan was saying we saw one of the judges on his phone on one of the fights. That is a disgrace. And here's my other thing. We need to get the rules unified all throughout the United States. And if I'm the UFC, guess what? You're a state and you're a commission. You don't want to apply those unified rules. Sorry, we're not fighting here. I don't care if you switch it on a week notice, 2 weeks notice, a month notice, a day's notice. Okay, the UFC can pull some strings. For example, guess what? When John Jones had that whole incident with the Nevada State Athletic Commission with coming up positive for a banned substance, guess what Dana White did? He moved it to California on a drop of a dime. Sure, it's an inconvenience to fighters, officials, inspectors, everything. But it doesn't matter. If these states don't want to follow the unified rules that were put in place to help evolve these sports, then good riddance. We don't need to fight in your state if I'm the UFC. And that's the approach that I would be taking. You don't want to go off the unified rules? Guess what? We're not fighting in your state. You're not going to enjoy your revenue increase. You're not going to enjoy the money that's going to be brought into your town through all the taxes of the people that are buying stuff at these arenas and buying stuff after the fact. Like, for example, like Las Vegas, people flying in there, flying in and out, all the money that they're spending, the tax revenue, it's just not going to happen. So Texas not having the rules unified is an absolute disgrace. Your judging is an absolute disgrace. Okay, and that's not from the John Jones. That's not just based off the John Jones and Dominic Reyes fight. But I do think John Jones won that fight. I might have said this earlier, but in the street, we're in a street fight. The guy at the end of the fight that's winning, he's usually the winner of that fight. Fourth and fifth round should be accounted for more, in my opinion. The point-based system based off of every action in the fight, including controlling the cage. And the thing is this, which I found interesting, the judging for MMA is not based off controlling the cage at all. Judging, you could be controlling the pace of the fight, you could be controlling the cage. It doesn't matter. They're just going off of strikes. And I think that's wrong because John Jones, he pressured forward the entire time, and he got Dominic Reyes to exert more energy by throwing these counter strikes because John was getting too close to his range. That needs to be accounted for. Every single one of these little factors need to be accounted for when judging an MMA fight. And I think at the end of the day, the more points you accumulate over a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight, based off what I was saying, every action needs a point, that is the winner of the fight. I'm going to really try to write something down in stone to try to figure out how we could properly judge a fight. But first things first, fights need to be judged as a whole. We need adequate judges, okay? And there needs to be a real system in place on what people are seeing. So a lot of I think we need to have judges that are watching it on TV, and we need judges that are watching it by the cage. Because from someone who's worked for an amateur MMA company and still does do inspecting, and I am there cage side watching these fights, making sure that the fighters are okay. I see how the judges watch the fights, guys. They see it through a cage, and guess what? Sometimes it's hard to visibly see what's going on in the cage, and that's not the judge's fault. What do you expect them to do? Run around the cage the entire time, depending on where the fighters are? That's not how it works, guys. They're stuck in one little corner, and they are there to judge the fight from that corner. So I just think overall, we in the MMA community, the people that are the higher ups, whether it's in the UFC or people that have been officiating for a long time, all sorts of officials, people that are just in this community, coaches, we need to figure out a proper system, how to judge so we don't continue to have controversy, okay? For Dominic Reyes, for all I know, I got to rewatch it. Like I said, the third round is up in the air. For all we know, he could have gotten robbed. But I also think the fourth and fifth rounds need to be accounted for more. There's just so many factors that go into judging a fight, and I just don't think that they're all being accounted for. I don't think they're being accounted for in our current system. If we want to evolve as a sport, we need to keep implementing things that's going to help our judging, that's going to help our officials. We need to keep evolving, and we need to keep implementing things. Okay, guys? We need a point system. We need a proper point system, a 10-point must system. Joe Rogan has been preaching this for years. For years. It doesn't work in MMA. There's way too many factors that go into it. There's so many factors that just weren't accounted for in this fight. And the guys the people that are the people that are saying, oh, Dominic Reyes won that fight easily. Guys, you're not looking at the big picture of the fight. If you're going off it by a round-by-round basis and you have him winning the third round, sure, but this is a fight. Fights should not be judged round by round. They need to be judged as a whole. If you're winning at the end of the fight, that should be accounted for more so than winning in the beginning of the fight. The ending is what matters, guys. If there was no time limit, and Dominic Reyes and John Jones kept fighting and that fifth round continued, don't you think that John Jones would have been able to finish him eventually? Think about it. These factors need to be applied. These little things need to be applied. Maybe not so much that oh, I'm going to give John that round. I'm going to give John the fight because if the fight would have continued, he would have been able to finish him eventually. But I do think that these little some factors need to be, most of the things that I've been talking about needs to be factored in. That's the way we're going to evolve the sport. And if I'm the UFC, I'm not going back to Texas. I'm not going back to you. Sorry. Derek Lewis versus Ilir Latifi. Guys, Derek Lewis lost that fight. Sure, Ilir Latifi didn't do much damage when they were standing, but those takedowns were super significant. And he was able to control him for a long time. I just don't see how Derek Lewis wins that fight. Why? Because he barely landed a flying knee? Sure, it was impressive to watch, but I don't know what these judges are looking at and what they're scoring. Ilir won that fight. So that's just my little rant on the whole thing. I'm just frustrated by it, and I really want to get feedback from you guys on on how to properly judge fights, and how we could solve this issue. Because guys, the more controversy that's brought up on our sport, it's not good. It's not good attention to our sport. It just shows that we're lacking. In every single sport, there's a clear scoring system for what happens. Soccer or football, whatever you Europeans would like to call it. You kick a ball in a goal, that's in the goal, that's 1 point. Football, field goal, 3 points. Touchdown, 6. Extra point, 1. Safety, 2. We need to have points for every little action that happens in it. Now, it's a lot easier said than done, obviously. But, ladies and gentlemen, look at all the other sports. We need to factor this in. We need to factor everything, otherwise this sport will not evolve. I agree with Big John with a lot of what he's saying, but in his podcast today with Josh Thompson. But guys, we need to evolve. We need to keep implementing more and more actions every year to ensure the safety of our sport and to ensure that no one's getting robbed of a victory. Okay, because it's getting out of hand at this point. I just don't know what more the MMA community needs to rally behind this cause and to get to the bottom of it. But the biggest thing for me, one of the biggest things for me is, I should say, excuse me, that was disgusting. I had a slice of pizza before. They shouldn't have done that. Anyways, the unified rules need to be put in place everywhere. And if these commissions don't want to adopt the unified rules, if I'm the UFC, any major organization, goodbye. So that's really it, guys. I really thought that it was an entertaining card. I just think that this Texas commission, and a lot of what happens is this: you're a part of the commission, you judge boxing, right? And you've known the one guy who's who's putting you in this place to judge. These are people that they're friends with and stuff, and they're going to give their friends the job to ref to judge a fight more so than some random person. It doesn't matter about qualifications. So that's why I believe the UFC needs to bring judges everywhere. They need to bring adequate judges everywhere, no matter where they go. And that's really it, guys. I'm glad I was able to get back on here and speak to you guys. Please let me know comments, concerns, what your thoughts are on this whole issue. I'd really like to get to the bottom of this and figure out a proper way to score MMA fights. I think they should be scored as a whole. Maybe you make the first round 10 minutes. Maybe you do 2 rounds for non-title fights. You do the first round 10 minutes like they would in Pride. And then the third, technically the second round, you do 5 minutes, make it 15 total. I don't know the proper way to do it. I think that people like me and other people who love this sport and are advocates for the sport, people that are much higher up than me, Joe Rogan's, these other people need to come together, and we need to figure out a proper way to do it. Thank you for listening, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Please just let me know what your thoughts are on this whole issue, and I will plan on doing more podcasts like this. Maybe not this week, but I'll get something going. Thank you, guys.